Hello, 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 my sisters in ministry out there. It is Reverend Jocelyn, and welcome to another episode of Sisters Start Your Ministry Hour. This is an hour completely dedicated to you and your growth for your vision, for your ministry, for your kingdom business. And I'm here to serve you, to connect with you, to share some insight along my journey of building a ministry from a simple blog to a national Christian trauma healing ministry. So, if this is your first time tuning in, if you happen to just stumble across this channel, I'm going to encourage you to do a couple things for me. First, you want to go ahead and slam that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Also, you can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all the channels at Rev Jocelyn. I'm constantly putting out helpful information, resources, tools to support you in building the vision that God has put on your heart. All right. Now, this is a live show. I'm here live every Sunday at 6:30 Central. And the benefit about watching live is you get a chance to submit your questions and we have an opportunity to engage and just explore ways in which I can help you on your journey. So be sure to tune in live to get your questions answered. And if you are watching live, I want you to blow up the chat to let me know that you are here and you are in the house. Okay. Let me know what city you're representing and also let me know a little bit about your ministry. And if you're watching the replay, no problem. I still want to know that you was in the house. So be sure to comment as well so that I can interact with you because I love connecting with my people. All right. So today we are focusing on the steps to prepare yourself for ministry. How to prepare yourself for ministry. And one of the first things that I think is vitally important is making sure that our mind and our spirit are prepared for the journey ahead. And I actually want to say spirit first and then mind. When it comes to stepping out into ministry, we know that this is something that God is leading us to do. This is something that's a journey of faith, and it is not for the faint at heart. In fact, it is going to be one of the most challenging things we do. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't do it because it's also one of the most rewarding things that we get to do to be obedient to God. And in doing so, our light impacts others. And as a foundation for our teaching today, I want to go to the word. I am reading from Passion Translation. I happen to have that with me while I'm doing some traveling. And I'm reading out of Second Corinthians 4. And it says, now it's because of God's mercy that we have been entrusted with the privilege of this new covenant ministry. The privilege of this new covenant ministry. And I want that to stand out to you because it is, in fact, a privilege to serve. It then goes on to say in verse 8, though we experience every kind of pressure, we are not crushed. And I think that's adequate because it describes what we will face sometimes when we are building our ministry, when we're being obedient. You would think that, just the floodgates will open up and just everything is going to just fall right into place. Sometimes that happens, but oftentimes there's adversity that we come across as we are saying yes to what God is leading us to. And I don't want you to be caught off guard when this happens. So it says, though we experience every kind of pressure, we're not crushed. At times, we don't know what to do, but quitting is not an option. I actually want you to put that in the comments for me. Quitting is not an option because what God is calling you to do, it is something that is going to not only impact your immediate sphere of influence, but it has the ability to transform lives in your community, across the state. For some, you have national and international ministries that are going to be birthed through you. So no, quitting is not an option. Thank you, Valerie. Thank you so much. And so as we look at that, it says we are persecuted by others, but God has not forsaken us. Sometimes people will in fact persecute you. Sometimes people will not understand your calling. They will, in fact, question you for doing what you're doing. You might feel persecuted, like by losing your job or losing friends, but that does not mean that you don't move forward. It says, we may get knocked down, but not out. Okay. And when we think about this is just telling us mentally and spiritually how we have to prepare for the road ahead. Because again, it is not an easy journey, but you are made for this. And so it's very important as you are getting ready to step out into what God has called you to, that you prepare yourself mentally and spiritually, grounded in the word for the road ahead. Right. And so we're going to make sure that we're staying prayed up as we're entering into this call. But beyond that, as we are looking at, okay, God, you are calling me down this path. How do I equip myself? What are some practical things that we can do? Well, I want to start off by sharing a little bit about my journey of equipping myself for ministry. Now, I have worked full time at my church, running the nonprofit youth center for over a decade. But when I felt called to ministry, I was led to go to seminary school to begin the process of equipping myself for what I was going to be later building. So I did. I enrolled and I started, studying the word, and I started taking pastoral care classes, and I started taking classes to prepare me for ministry inside the church. And that was a part of my formal formation for what I do today. And for some, that might be where God is leading you to go to seminary school. For some of you, it really does make sense for the field that you're going into. But even beyond going to seminary school, there was additional work that I needed to do to equip myself for my path. And one of those areas that I found myself looking for additional equipping was in the area of my passion, which was trauma healing. Now, I don't know, Valerie, or anyone else who's watching, what your area of focus is. If you have a specialty area where you feel like you want to get better equipped, go ahead and put that in the chat for me. But for me, it was trauma. It was helping people to heal. And I had already a master's degree in social work. And I also was getting my master's in theological studies, but I wanted to figure out a way to blend my faith in the mental health field to do this work. And so I came across this curriculum called the Trauma Healing Institute, and it had a setup already in place where it showed me how to guide people through this trauma healing experience based on the Bible and mental health principles. And so I decided to get certified through them, which brings me to point number 2. Outside of going to a formal institution to equip yourself, for some of us, it makes sense for you to get a certification. I went through this process of getting certified through this it was global, internationally recognized curriculum to be able to equip myself with training on how to run these groups. And from that certification, that did not take me years to get. It took me 2 months to earn that certification. I was able to start running groups locally and then nationally. And now I have international partnerships where I'm doing this trauma healing work from a certification. And so for you, it might make sense for you to go down the path of certification versus maybe going to a 4-year program to get a degree. It depends. But for some of you, you might be passionate about domestic violence, or you might be passionate about human trafficking, or you might be passionate about some other area, and they might have a program out there where you can get certified. But it's important that you do your research when determining which certification to get. And I'm going to speak to that in just a second, but I want to bring Warrior Beauty. Vanessa is Vanessa. Oh, Vanessa, I'm sorry. I messed up your name. Vanessa, yes. How to help women through healing, trauma, and deliverance. Awesome, Vanessa. I love that. So you have a similar passion as I do around healing, and it's necessary. So with that, someone else you might say is a different area, whatever that is, consider maybe a certification as your focus. But you got to do your research. I say this from experience because I remember when I was starting to do the trauma healing groups, and I was like, oh, I also want to be able to offer counseling for people. But I'm like, I don't want to have to go back to school to get this like degree in Christian counseling. So I looked up a biblical counseling program, and it seemed great. It was a program where there was like a year of online study. And so I engaged in the material, online program. I'm studying, I'm reading the books. Then there was a like huge paper I had to write. It was like 40 pages based on these books and stuff. And I'm going through the material and I'm like going through the process, and I'm committed to getting my biblical counseling certification. So I completed this 40-page paper, and I submit this paper into the agency, and I'm ready for them to share with me my next steps in terms of like the practicum where I'm studying under a biblical counselor. And I'll never forget, I get this email back, and they tell me in so many words, thank you for applying, but we don't believe in women being ordained. And so we are not going to read your 40-page paper or consider you for this program. What? Like, I am like mad. I'm like, I just spent a year of my life studying this program. I wrote a 40-page paper, and y'all not gonna read my stuff. Okay. So I had to like work through my feelings. I was hurt over here. But what I will say is that it taught me a couple things, because sometimes you can't control what happens to you, but you can control how you respond. And so for me, I had to look at like nothing's wasted, because even though they weren't going to give me the official certification through their organization because they didn't believe in women being ordained, I still had the knowledge that I learned. Okay. Secondly, the valuable lesson of doing your due diligence up front in terms of organizations who you're going to affiliate yourself with, because if they don't have the same theological worldview as you, it can serve as a problem. And you don't want to get to the end like I did to find out that they're not going to honor your work. So you want to kind of do that due diligence up front. But then I had to take a moment and ask myself after, my little pity party, because I did have a pity party, to say, Jocelyn, do you really want to offer the counseling directly? Or is it a matter of you just want to make sure the services are provided? Because you can oversee as the director these services being provided, but you don't have to be the one doing the counseling. And that was a pivotal moment for my business, because that's when I decided to hire a team of Christian counselors to do the work. And I just was the person who oversaw the marketing, the business side of things. And I was able to launch my Christian counseling practice. So good still came of it. You get a bunch of lemons. They talk about make lemonade, all the stuff, right? But I do share that story because as you are considering certification programs, you do want to do your due diligence. All right. So I know Vanessa's in the house. Thank you for letting me know, Vanessa. Correction for your name. Who else is here? Who else is representing online? Let me know what city, what state, even if you're watching a replay, and let me know a little bit about your ministry so that I can be connected with you in that way. Okay, so as we move on, we talked about how you can have formal education through school, you can get a certification. But now I also want to talk about other ways in which you can equip yourself for your ministry, right? One being through mentorship. Mentorship, because there are people who are in the field that you are interested in entering into. And even though we're adults, we still need mentors. We need people in our lives who will pour into us, who will let us know, hey, like there's another way that you can approach this. And so looking out for people who are in the field that we want to go into to support us is crucial. Hey, Minister Veronica, welcome. So glad to have you here, representing from Texas. And so think about what mentors you have in your life who can support you as you are building your ministry. This is vital. In addition to mentors, I also talk about how we all can get our hands on a $15 mentor. $15 mentor is a good book. I don't have my book right next to me, but you have any book on a subject that you want to learn more about, $10 to $15, maybe if they high end 20, you can get a book to learn to grow in that area that you're interested in. And here's the thing, for some of us, we might say, oh, well, I'm not a big reader. Well, they make it easy for all of us because even if we don't have the physical book in our hand per se, then we can listen to an audiobook. I mean, there's times where I'm doing the dishes or I'm at the gym and I'm listening to an audiobook. I'm in the car, I'm listening to an audiobook in the shower. They make it easy for us. So I don't want us to make it an excuse that I don't have time to learn because ladies, I want us to look at ourselves as lifelong learners. Okay. I want you to identify that as a part of your identity because learning does not end when you graduate from whatever school you're part of. We constantly want to be developing ourselves, and particularly in the area of our ministry, even if, for example, we have a degree in a certain area, like a degree in Christian counseling. But there's other elements that you will have to learn around business, about marketing, around, setting up your organizational structure, where we need to be reading and learning and growing. And so a book can be a $10, $15 mentor that gives you access to someone's best gems that they took the time to write down and put in a book for you to just eat up. Okay. So, how many of us are going to read a good book to help us to move forward? If you got some favorite books, you could actually put that in the comments for me. Okay. But reading is another way for you to equip yourself. Another thing I love doing is listening to great podcasts. Listening to podcasts of people who have gone down the path before me, particularly because it is hard out here in these ministry streets. Vanessa says she knows what I'm talking about with the books. It is hard out here sometimes. And even though we know that we are doing what we're doing for the Lord, and we know that we're excited and we have this calling, we have this passion, at the same time, there are times in which we can feel like we're alone. And so I love listening to podcasts of individuals who have gone down that path before me, and they get a chance to talk about, like, how did they overcome this obstacle? What did they learn along the way? And these learnings are gems. There's a saying that goes like, a fool does not learn from their mistakes. A smart person, they learn from their mistakes. And a wise person learns from someone else's mistakes. And when you get that, when you learn from someone else's mistakes, so you don't have to go down that same path. Ha! Baby, that saves you a lot of time. That saves you a lot of tears. That saves you some energy. And that's what you get when you listen to good podcasts. So I have to even tell myself sometimes when I'm feeling a little lazy, just want to watch some regular TV, girl, instead of doing that, feed your mind by watching a podcast or listening to a podcast, because we have to be very careful, sisters. Hear me. What goes into our eye gates, what goes into the ear gates, what we let into our spirit. And because of the fact that we are dealing with some challenges as we're growing our ministry and building it up, we have to protect our space and make sure that we're filling ourselves up every day, not just like once a week or once a month or just at a conference. That stuff is cool, but every day we're filling up our ear gates and our eye gates with things that are going to help us to move forward. Now, I mentioned conferences because I am a big fan of going to conferences and events. Think about conferences as a way to just like jolt you forward. Like, it gives you that like energy burst and you just get a lot of information at the same time. It's like drinking from a fire hose. But the great thing about going to conferences and events is that you get a chance to network. So you want to be in the room with people who are going to help you with like different areas to network and to also challenge you, maybe make connections, right? So getting in the room is important. Speaking of getting in the room, ladies, I just want to remind you, if you haven't already, you want to be in the room for our upcoming conference, our ministry launch conference this coming January 23rd to 24th. So mark your calendars for that, because we're bringing in women from across the country. I'm going to put the link in the chat, ministry launch conference. Excuse me, ministrylaunchconference.com is where you can get your tickets for our upcoming conference. But at events like this, you get a chance to learn from experts. You get to connect with other people who are like-minded. You get to make great connections. All right. So conferences are a wonderful way for you to equip yourself for ministry. Now, last week, I talked a little bit about this already, the importance of experiential discernment, right? So as you are equipping yourself, there's only so much that you can learn through a book. Like, yes, read all day, listen to a podcast, attend a conference, you go to school, you get educated. But I have found this, that some people, they are so educated, they're educated all day. They got all the information, but they don't do anything with it. They are informational obese. They just got all this stuff, all this knowledge, and they're afraid to implement. Maybe because they just like, they're wondering, like, do I have enough information? Or I'm not ready yet, or I don't want to make a mistake. I don't know what it is. But at some point, you got to get out there and try some things. Tell me if I'm talking to you right now. If you're one of those people who kind of like slow to launch, no, you heard a lot of stuff. Try it. Get out there. Make the first post. Launch the program. Start working on the book, or at least volunteering, getting yourself connected in the field. Get your hands dirty, so you know what you like, you know what you don't like. You can test, and then you reflect, and then you tweak, and then you enhance. But at some point, you got to get out there. So maybe it's internship, maybe it's volunteering, maybe it's like spending some time with people, but you do want to start getting some experience under your belt to help you to prepare yourself. We'll talk a little bit more about that in upcoming weeks, but I'm just talking to those of us who just only focus on the education piece. Another thing is, sisters, it is very important that you have the right people around you as you ascend. I was just talking to my therapist. I believe everybody needs a therapist, to help them to work through some things. And when you are working to go to new levels, you have to be mindful that some people are not riding that elevator all the way to the top with you. And it's okay. They could be great people. But as you are like enhancing your mindset and you are doing things differently, and your focus becomes laser focused, and you just like don't have time for certain things, you're changing, you're evolving, and that's good. But not everybody is going to evolve with you. And so you have to prepare yourself to allow people to be released from your life when their season is up. And you have to surround yourself with the right people who are going to be able to be real with you about what's going on in their life, and you can be real with them. Because here's the thing, again, there's going to be moments where you're feeling afraid, when you're doubting yourself, and you need an open place to talk. Now, again, therapist is a great place to do that, but you also want to have people who understand the journey. So community matters and accountability matters, because when you say, hey, I'm going to write this book, having someone who's like, okay, what's up? Where's chapter 1? When are you going to have that done? Or people who are like, okay, sis, when you launch this podcast, I want to know. Let us know how this goes so that we can support you and share with you. Accountability and community matters. One thing I left out earlier, those of you who just joined, welcome. Please let us know who you are and where I almost said zooming in from, but where are you streaming in from? When we are preparing ourselves for ministry, I talked about mindset earlier and being spiritually grounded. I also think it's extremely important that we care for our mental health because for some of us, we've dealt with significant trauma, significant. And it's one thing to minister to people from our scars. Scars have healed to for the most part, and you still know that they're there. You have the testimony, you still remember, but a scar is not an open wound that's bleeding on people. And we want to make sure that we are not completely trying to minister to people from an open wound. This is where people get hurt, right? Like we see this sometimes at church. People, they're ministering and you're like, how are they in leadership and they're so mean? Or like they're just like unable to handle, like their emotional intelligence is sketchy or whatever's going on with them. Well, it could be because like some things have happened to them and they have not healed, right? So for us, it's very important, sisters, that we deal with that thing. That yes, we are turning our pain into purpose, but we're doing so from a way in which we are identifying how our pain might be influencing our decisions, how our pain might be causing us to play small, how our pain is causing us to operate out of a spirit of fear, or we're protecting ourselves, or we're not moving forward because we have imposter syndrome. What has happened in our past absolutely can be influencing your present, particularly if you're unaware of it. So, how are you dealing with that to help you to prepare for your next step in ministry? Now, if this is resonating with you, talk back to me now in the comments. I want to know. But that is something I full heartedly believe because sometimes what propels us to want to start our ministry is coming from the place of us surviving a traumatic event. But in us surviving a traumatic event, we still have to deal with the collateral damage, if you will, from that event so that we can operate from a place of wholeness as we are helping other people along. Now, not to say we have to be completely at a place of arrival, but we want to be aware of how that traumatic event or our past is influencing how we're entering and showing up in ministry. Okay, vitally important. So, the next point that I want to make, ladies, as it relates to all of us as we are engaging in this work of ministry and kingdom business, is having a coach. Having a coach is crucial for us to be able to stay in the game. When you think about any sport, even if it's an individual sport, there is a coach. There is a coach there who their responsibility is to stretch that athlete mentally, physically. They're helping them to see themselves differently. They're helping them to learn the skills necessary, the techniques necessary to enter into whatever sport and field position that they're in from a place of excellence. No basketball team, no soccer team, no whatever sport ever goes out there and it's a free for all without a good coach. So if we are going to be entering into whatever field we are a part of, and we know that God has called us to do this kingdom work, then it's important that we have a coach who is going to play that same role, who's going to challenge us and be like, Vanessa, no, no, you've put the work in. I'm not going to let you quit. You can't quit. In fact, okay, try again this way. You tried it this first time, it didn't quite work out the way you wanted to, but what lessons can we learn from all this? Or Veronica, like having a coach to say, okay, I've been down this road before. You don't want to try this way. How about you approach it this way? If you adjust this form, if you adjust this, then you can get a better result. So, coaches, their responsibility is to look at things from an objective point of view, and they can give you a perspective that you can't necessarily see sometimes because you're too close to it. But they can say, no, no, this is how we handle this. And so, my question for you is who's your coach? And if you don't have a coach, but you are very serious about entering into this next stage of your vision, then I'm going to encourage you to get one. And I'm happy to have a conversation with you about potentially serving as your coach to help you to start, to build, and to sustain this ministry that God has put on your heart. It is a joy for me to coach women across the country who have answered the call to build a purpose driven business. And I take women from idea stage, like I'm just thinking about it stage, to getting you launched, to helping you to create the structure, to help you to create something that lasts beyond you. So if this is you, if you're at a stage where you're ready to launch, if you are looking to like scale your ministry, you need help with that, then I'm going to encourage you to apply for a breakthrough session with me where we spend some time together, where I learn about your ministry. We talk about like some of the challenges, your desires, and then at the end of our call, we talk about a plan forward to help you to get the support that you need to take your ministry to the next level. But whether it's me or someone else, I'm telling you, sis, we all need a good coach. Okay, so tell me so far in the chat what stands out to you. Veronica said, Amen. Okay, awesome, Veronica. Thank you so much. And ladies, I want to encourage you, if you haven't already, to submit your questions for me for the show. Like this, again, is a live show. And so if you have questions, you can submit them. You can ask the questions here and I'll try to get to them, but I don't always get to the questions that are in the comments. And so you can submit them in advance for me to answer those questions for you. Now, Vanessa, I saw a question come through from you and I am pulling it up. Okay, so your question or your feedback about where in your journey did you feel like it was necessary to create a team, and how did you go about it? First of all, Vanessa, thank you so much for asking that question. So I remember when I was still pretty early on in my journey of building my ministry. And I had met with a friend for coffee. And it was a friend of a friend. And we were just hanging out and we were talking. And he was asking me how business was going because honestly, our ministry is a business. We have business part of our ministry. And so he was asking me how it was going. And honestly, I was stressed out of my mind because I was trying to do certain things that I just was not good at. All right. Things that that Jocelyn's not good at, like design. I suck at it. Okay. I could draw some stick figures, I can't do all the stuff. So I was bad at that. There were certain things that I was trying to do from an administrative standpoint that I was getting by on. But when you're first getting started, it is like so much to do. And so I was feeling like there, I wasn't getting all the stuff done. It was so much pressure on my shoulders because I was trying to build this ministry and start generating enough income. And so I started crying right there in the coffee shop. I started crying. And he was like, okay, breathe, it's okay. And as I was talking about what's going on, I'm like, I need help. I'm stressed. And I don't know what to do, but I'm like, I can't afford to hire somebody right now because I'm just getting started. And he was like, you actually might be able to. And honestly, you sound like you're at a place where you can't afford not to hire somebody. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, what you talking about, Willis? Like, what's going on? And that's when he said to me, okay, have you ever heard of hiring people overseas? And I was like, I know, like I hear big companies doing that, but no. And he was like, no, well, there's avenues to do this. And that's when he started telling me about like Free Up and there's other platforms now like Upwork. And there's like tons of platforms out there outside of just Fiverr. But Free Up, for example, or Upwork, they allow for you to connect with international talent and you pay that platform and then they pay the people overseas. And the nice thing is like some of the individuals who you can connect with, you can set up where you pay them like weekly, and the rates are better because our dollar goes a lot further. So, for example, for a job in the United States, you might pay someone $30 an hour. Well, most of us can't afford to pay someone $30 an hour, but we can pay someone overseas. Um, the equivalent of $30 an hour for them, it would be an equivalent of that, but we might only have to pay $6 because our dollar goes that far. So it's still a really good wage for them. But now instead of paying them $30 an hour, we're paying $6 an hour. And for me, that was like, what? This is great because I am able to get support in areas that I'm not good at, like web design and graphic design and some of the technical things that you need when growing your ministry. And it doesn't have to break the bank. And so I hired my first team member through a platform like that, where I got overseas talent in place, and they were great in helping me get off the ground. And now I engage in this all the time. I actually am grabbing my book. So I have the book, the Sister Start Your Ministry book, but there's a workbook. And I went into more detail about this actually in the workbook. This is why I grabbed it for you, because I wanted people to know how to build your team. So on page 86, oh, you can't read it, but page 86, it's literally at the top, steps to building your team. And I walk you through step by step some of the things that you would do, some of the websites that you would go to build your team and then to properly onboard them. Because here's the other thing. When you are building your team, you sometimes it's like trial and error. There's been people who I brought on and I had to let go. And that's a concern. Sometimes people like, oh, how to, build the team, how to get the right people. Sometimes you just don't know. So I suggest that you hire someone like for a very short term. You give them one project, maybe two. You see how they do. And if they perform well, then great. You extend that contract a little bit longer. And then, from there, you can kind of build. Maybe you start off with just a couple hours, nothing too risky. You're just trying to test them out. But over time, you can build this team out. And you want to be clear on what is their job description. You want to be clear on not just a job description, what are your expectations? Because sometimes we bring somebody on board, but we're not clear on their expectations or what success even looks like. So as you are figuring out your staff and your team structure before you even hire, say to yourself, what does success look like in this role? And what do I need to do to make sure that this person is onboarded well, right? And you can get a lot done with someone on your team, even if you're starting off, Vanessa, with 10 hours a week. Imagine if you got 10 hours of your week back. All right. And again, you might be able to hire someone for $6 an hour, and they can take some of this busy work off of your plate. And 10 hours a week, you can absolutely do more for your ministry with buying your time back. Buy Your Time Back, by the way, is a great book by Dan Martell. So I encourage you to read that as you're thinking about setting up the structure for your team as well. So, Vanessa, I hope that answered your question. Thank you for consistently tuning in week after week and submitting these good questions, sister. I hope it's helping you. And anybody else who has questions, I want you to know that you can submit those questions in advance to me. I love hearing from you. And you can do so at, let's submit your questions. So at revjocelyn.com/questions. And again, remember to subscribe, because even outside of this time together, I'm always putting out new content for you throughout the week to support you on your journey. Another final reminder for you, if you haven't already, sign up for a breakthrough session, a ministry, we call it a ministry and business accelerator call, where I hear about your questions, I learn about your goals, we have some one-on-one time, and we really help you to move forward in the direction that God is leading you. I want to spend some time with you, and I want to help you in reaching your goals. Okay, so that is it for today's episode on equipping yourself for ministry. Again, we're here every week live. So be sure to subscribe, share this episode with a friend, invite a girlfriend to tune in next week so we can spend time together. And I thank you so much for those who tune in. I enjoy I feed off of your energy. And so thank you, thank you, thank you for being here. And I look forward to seeing you next week. God bless you, sisters. You take care.